Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining me. Today we're going to look into knowledge articles and management. So if you have never worked with knowledge, I'm going to talk about when to use knowledge, when does it make sense for your use case, what are the things to be aware of, how to set it up, what are the things that you need, and so on. So first thing first, you want to make sure that you have knowledge in your org, so you have the licenses. Knowledge, unfortunately, does not come for free. In doubt, you can go to your company information in setup and see under feature licenses what licenses do you have. So since I'm using a developer org, it always comes with 2 total licenses for free. So if you just want to play around, you can definitely sign up for an org and just play around with it. If you want to look in your actual org, then go here and find out if you have knowledge licenses or not. Usually most orgs come with 2 licenses out of the box. If you have Service Cloud, then you may also have knowledge licenses for free. And if you have Health Cloud, then that also comes with knowledge. So just make sure you have the proper amount of licenses because this determines who can actually publish and create knowledge. So before you make up a use case and go all in knowledge, make sure that you have the right budget to actually have the licenses procured. Next thing, then once you are done that, you can go to your user record and make sure that if you're going to play around with this, you have the knowledge user checkbox turned on for your user record. So knowledge user is true here. If you don't have this turned on, you won't be able to publish knowledge. So make sure that's enabled for your user record. Okay, with that being said, let's jump into knowledge settings. So after everything is done, if you go to knowledge in setup, you will see some options. So there's knowledge settings, there's data category mappings, data category assignments. I'm going to just quickly show you what knowledge settings is all about. I'm going to hit edit. And so most of the things you can leave it turned on. So highlight relevant articles, search within text results. So all of these things needs to be enabled. They are more for searching capability. And this one is important to call out because this is what will allow you to suggest articles. I'm going to talk about this later in more detail. So that's it for here. Just enable it and that's pretty much it. You don't have to turn anything on or disable it. Just leave it as it is out of the box. Then let's look at the knowledge tab for a few seconds here. So if you go to your app launcher and search for knowledge, you should see a knowledge tab. If you don't see this for any reason, go to your system or go to your profile settings and make sure you have access to the tab and the tab is not turned off for whatever reason. And then let's also look at object manager of knowledge. So if you go to object manager and type knowledge, as you can see, knowledge is API name underscore KAV. So this is very different from other objects. If you have account, it's just called account, right? There is no KAV or anything like that. If it's a custom object, you have underscore C, but knowledge is underscore KAV. And so it comes with some standard fields. What you can do is, what I end up doing is create a rich text area field because there is no rich text area out of the box. If you are looking to create articles that is more formatted for the users. Before we deep dive into knowledge, let's talk about why do you actually need to create knowledge articles and what is the use case, right? So let's take an example. For example, you have a tech call center where people are calling in about their issues about the products. So maybe you are selling laptop products, keyboard, laptops, camera, things like that. So if somebody's calling in to the call center and asking, hey, my laptop is no longer working, can you help me with that? It is hard for the call center agent to figure out, oh, how should I help this person on the call or on the website, right? So what you can do is create a knowledge database within Salesforce to help agents answer the questions faster. You can also, and one of the key use cases I see for knowledge is self-service on the website. So as you may be aware of, Salesforce also allows you to create communities and the sites. So your company can also create a website and create a bunch of knowledge articles to help the customer on the web, as well as when people call in, the agents can also assist using those same knowledge articles. So everybody is kind of looking at the knowledge at one single source of truth, as opposed to having different information online and agent view, etc. So yeah, it's really just as the name suggests, a knowledge base. The creation of knowledge articles is not difficult, right? It's just creating any other records, but a lot of thought has to go into how you want to publish, how you want to maintain, how you want to break out your knowledge articles to make it easier for searching and visibility. And then another element of this is as also you want to be able to suggest articles as the call is coming in, as the case is coming in. I'm going to try to create a new knowledge article here. So I'm just going to hit new. I created some record types. You don't have to. And then this is my custom fields, question and answer. You don't have to create it this way. Your laptop issues with software. So this is a software issue. So this is just a knowledge article. I created it pretty simply, just like I would create any other records. Now, look at on the right side, you've got something called categories. What is categories, right? So categories is another standard object that comes with knowledge. It is related to knowledge articles. To set up categories, the way I would look at categories is exactly that, right? So let's say you have software, hardware, printer issues, different types of issues within that call center. You can set up different categories. You can also have groups and categories within the group as well. Let's look into where to set up the categories. So if you go to your setup again and type categories, you will see under service, there is something called data categories. And then there's called data category setup. Data category is like a hierarchy structure. You will have group, and then under groups, you can have various categories. Why are the groups important is, let's say you wanted to have two different groups, sales and service, or two different types of call center, completely different, but they are all using Salesforce. You can have two different groups in that way. So let me create a service group that's more relevant to me and hit save. So that's just the base level group. So first you have to create the group, then you can create categories within that group. And this really depends on your use case and how you want to categorize it. One thing to keep in mind is you always have to think about how you want to control the visibility of these groups. If you want everybody within the service seeing all the articles, that's fine. You can also control it. So let me just do service, and then I'm going to say hardware is one category within service. Then I'm going to say software is another category within the service. So these are my two different categories within service group. And then I can also say within hardware as well, I can add child categories. So I can say, laptop is one, and then I've got printers, printer, or whatever else might be, desktop, let's say. And then I will just activate this group because it hasn't been activated yet. Okay, so now that we have got the data category setup done and all the groups are activated, let's go back to the permission. The most common way, especially if you're using permission sets already for different groups within your org, you can assign the permissions within the permission set itself. So let me just go to a permission set and show you where that appears. I'm just going to go to a permission set that I already have. And then in that permission set, you will see something called data category visibility. And then you can click on that. And you can either make everything visible to everyone. I don't recommend this unless that is actually the use case, because it's much better to show people what they want to see as opposed to showing them the world, and then the agents are going to get confused. So let's say this permission set is assigned to only hardware user group. Then you can just say, I want to only assign hardware to this group of users. So they only see hardware knowledge articles. The software knowledge articles can be assigned to software. So you can choose custom and make sure you only assign the right categories to that. Then you can hit save, and that's one way to control visibility. So permission sets are just one way to set up visibility, especially if your users have different permission sets already. But if your users are divided by roles, then you can also use roles to define that. So go to your roles and expand all. I'm just going to click on one of the roles that I already have. And if you go to any role, you will see there is a category group visibility settings. And here you can say edit. Again, it's a very similar screen. You can do custom, and then you can basically just do the same thing that we did before. First remove the all, and then do hardware and add, and then save. So that's another way to set up roles. Another way to also set up visibility. So this is the standard quote way, I will say. But if you wanted to get more fancy with knowledge sharing, you can enable that setting that I just talked about in the knowledge settings that use standard Salesforce sharing. And what that will allow you to do is all of the things that we just talked about will become basically invalid. And then you can use the normal sharing rules, just like how you use sharing rules for account, contact, and other objects. You can also use sharing rules to just set up sharing that way as well. I'm not going to enable this right now, but if you have questions on that, let me know and I can dig more into that. Okay, so we've got everything enabled. Now I just created this knowledge article. I'm gonna add categories. If you are looking to run reports or show, how many knowledge articles are there for software category versus hardware category, there is no good way to do that using reports or list views in Lightning. In Classic, there used to be a list view. So if you switch to Classic, you can run list views on different categories, but in Lightning, that's still not possible. So you would have to write a flow automation to get the value of category and stamp that on a different field on the knowledge article. That's more advanced concept, but I'm just saying that there are certain limitations on what you can do with the categories or not. But for now, I'm just going to add a category here. So for the laptop issues, I'm going to tag it as hardware and just click laptop. Okay. And then I'm just going to publish it. You can publish now, or you can do scheduled publications as well. I'm just going to publish now. And done. So that is my knowledge articles. So the majority of the work that will be involved if you set up knowledge is actually creation of the knowledge articles. If your organization is running a call center, I can guarantee that some sort of documentation may already exist. It may not be as well defined. It probably is just the teams or the agents having their own documentation, but it definitely exists somewhere. So the first step of the process is gathering all of the documentation, whether it's somebody's laptop, it's in a sticky note, Excel sheet, SharePoint, whatever it might be. Gather all of the documentation and then start to consume and see how does it make sense to organize those documentation. In my scenario, I had so many different group of agents, and all of these agents had different departments within them, and the way they were divided is through different departments. And this was a healthcare org, so they had different specialty departments, right? And then so they had different Excel sheets for each of those departments. So we ended up creating a bunch of data categories for each department. So with that being said, I'm not going to create a bunch of knowledge articles here, but just understand that that will be your first step. And then the second step you want to do is identify who is going to manage those articles going forward. There needs to be some sort of knowledge content management guidelines set up ahead of time so that people know what their role is, who is the author, who is the final approver, and so on. There is no out-of-the-box approval process. So if you are looking to enable that, then I would just suggest you can create an approval process on the knowledge articles, and then people can create the draft, and only like one person maybe gets to publish the knowledge articles. Speaking of which, knowledge R versioning. So since I just published this one, this is like version 1. I cannot edit the version 1. I'll have to edit it as draft first, which will then create a version 2 of the same article. And then I can add other things to the same knowledge article. And then that creates a version 2. So this allows for people to go back to versions. Maybe they accidentally removed something, or maybe they're trying this out. So until you publish the version, the end users are not going to see it. So the final version, if the users are already using this knowledge article, the draft is not going to be visible to them. This is only for the authors who are gonna create. Maybe they're trying different things out. So you can continue to create the draft articles without impacting the end users. And then once you're ready to go, you can then publish that's version 2, and then it's gonna have second version. You can always go back to the previous version if you choose to do so. Okay. And then if you basically just want to get rid of the knowledge, you can also just archive the knowledge. What archiving does, it doesn't actually delete it. It just puts it in the archive status. And then once you archive something, you can then delete it. First you have to archive, then it delete. I think that's pretty much at a high level about the knowledge setup. Now let's talk about how do you place the knowledge articles on the case page so that the agents can see it without losing the context. So I'm actually going to go to case here, case object, and it's going to create a new case page. And then what I really want to talk about is the knowledge component. So there is a standard component called knowledge. Play around with that. So let's just see what that looks like. I'm going to hit save and activate. So we have the case detail and the knowledge here. So what that allows you to do is agents can search knowledge right here. And once we have the suggested articles feature turned on, we can also see more suggested articles here as the data gets rich values. For if there is nothing available in the suggested articles, agents can also just type things here and get their search view updated. So if I just type laptop, I'm going to see more suggestions appear. And if I hover over, I can see all the details right here. If I click on it, it opens up a new tab. And if this article helped me, I can also attach the article to this case so that the algorithm keeps getting better. I just created 2 knowledge articles, both for hardware, one for printer and one for laptop data categories. And pro tip here, I use ChatGPT to quickly create those articles. So as you can see, my articles are looking pretty healthy now. I've got a lot of information in here. So another thing to keep in mind, now that we have GPT, we have Gen AI technologies available to us, you don't have to rely on manually creating knowledge articles. There always has to be somebody validating, of course, but if you have already a knowledge base, whether it's in Salesforce or it is in SharePoint or some other documentation site, consider also exploring Gen AI capabilities, because there are some really powerful tools out there that can digest all of the information, all of the word or text in there, and they can also generate knowledge articles for you, so you don't have to manually do that. And furthermore, ongoing basis as well, they can look at the different cases that is coming in and auto create knowledge articles based on different data sources as well. So there are some really exciting things that you may want to try out around authoring of knowledge articles. Now let's look into how we can show different suggested articles for a case page when an agent is working on the case. So go back to your knowledge settings, and there are kind of 2-step way to do this. According to Salesforce documentation, you can use the standard suggested article feature, or you can use the Einstein recommendations. Recommended way is to use Einstein recommendations because that relies on more data and AI and will be better in the long term. But obviously there will be a training phase for that data model to start to suggest articles that makes more sense. So for the first step, go to knowledge settings and you can edit. And out of the box, subject is set up. So this is going to use values on the subject. So make sure that your subject in case actually has meaningful value and not random information. Otherwise, your suggested articles are not going to make sense. If there are things like you also want to add like case reason, maybe the product name or something else, you can obviously add that depending on your use cases. I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to create a case first. So my case subject is going to be laptop is not turning on. So you see that I added the subject laptop is not turning on. it gave me 2 different suggested articles. Those are the only 2 I have. So it can't be used as a very specific guideline, because since it is looking for words to match on, and I'm not 100% sure how it actually finds out. I think it just looks for text values. So since both have not in the text, it is showing both. If I just added, let's say, laptop, just laptop, right? Let's see what the suggested articles are going to be. So now that I only added laptop, I can see only 1 article is appearing. So it relies on different text values within the values that you mapped. So another call out is to be careful on what values are in your subject and the fields that you're choosing to map, and also how are you documenting the knowledge articles. If you are going to map anything, make sure it actually makes sense for the suggested articles as well if you're going to use this feature. So what I would recommend in this is make sure you're starting with like a pilot group of users. So, as they're working on the cases, they are probably finding articles and they can attach. So this is the functionality, the attach button. So as people keep attaching articles to cases, you will be having more data points to be able to train the model to then work better. So any similar cases that come in future, the suggested articles will get better. Another way is also to use Einstein knowledge recommendations, as I mentioned. Unfortunately, I cannot show that to you in my dev org because they're only available in Enterprise Performance and Unlimited Edition. So it should be pretty straightforward to set up. So all you need to do is go to Einstein article recommendations in your org, not your dev org, in your actual Salesforce dev org from your client. And you can enable it. Once you enable it, it will ask you to select a bunch of fields that you want the recommendations to work on. So basically you have to select the fields on the case and then corresponding fields on the knowledge. Call out here is that it only supports text fields. So if you have like a pick list field, then you may want to convert that into a text field or stamp that value in a text field because it doesn't like pick list. You cannot use pick list as a field here for the recommendation engine. And then there are you have to select primary and supporting fields for it to provide data. And then once you do all of that, both on the case and the knowledge fields, so in this case, I would say knowledge title would be my title. For summary, I would probably choose description. You can either choose a custom field or a standard field. Since in my knowledge setting, I created a custom field, I would probably use that field here. You can also add a bunch of supporting fields. Then you have to build and activate the model. That will take sometimes anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. So it takes some time for it to activate the model. Then once it is activated, you will start to see, you can give your agents access. So this is where I would recommend giving access to specific users. Otherwise, it may crowd their view. The moment you add this knowledge, and if both are enabled, the Einstein recommendations will appear right below it. So you're going to see suggested articles, and then you're also going to see recommended articles right underneath this. And then the recommended articles will have percent. So it will say 90% relevant or 45% relevant. And then users can also say they found it helpful or not helpful. So the engine will learn and then will not recommend it in future. So it is up to the users to actually do that and constantly work on it. So highly recommend enabling it for your power users and users who are more motivated to do that. And then you can open it up for rest of your users as well. And just a screenshot here for how it looks like right there. So you're going to have relevancy and the Einstein appear, and they can do the same thing, attach article or say it's not helpful as well. All right, that is all for today about knowledge. I hope this helps you to understand the foundations of knowledge and at least encourages you to try it on your own. It is not scary. I know when I was first using knowledge article, it was scary because it was brand new. But once you enable it and kind of start to work with it, there will be some stuff that you'll run along the way. Like one thing I learned as well was different versions of knowledge will have different IDs. So this ID is not going to be the same for every version. So if you're sharing IDs For knowledge, that doesn't work really well. I would recommend sharing the URL name because that doesn't change unless you actually change it. So there are things you're going to learn along the process, but try it on your dev.org. A lot of features are available in dev.org, and then obviously you can use your company's org as well to try it on and do a little POC, show it to your business users and get feedback. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you have any specific questions that I'll be happy to help as well.